Hi all, let's have a look at another amazing game of the Grand Chess Tour in Paris. This is a rapid game. Mamedyarov playing white against Magnus Carlsen. So d4 from Mamedyarov, we see actually a Nimzo-Indian, a nice treat. So allowing the pin. We have knight f3 now. Quite common is e3, which is the Rubinstein variation, or queen c2, which is one of Kasparov's favourite moves here. Knight f3 is the third most popular response. We have now, after castling, usually queen c2 is played here, or e3 again actually, but we have bishop g5 here. Still quite a number of games from this position. c5, e3, black took, white took back, d5, c takes, e takes. So we see the scene is set. Black's d pawn is isolated here, so is white's. Can white put more pressure on that with the initiative? Bishop e2, h6. For the moment, the knight is pinned, so no problem with d5 yet. And now, actually, black gives up the dark square bishop. Magnus gives up that dark square bishop, and it's often by giving up the bishop of a certain colour, it's the other colour which becomes focus of attention quite often. And here, after knight c6, there might be plans later with knight c6 to try and, fix that backward pawn on the semi-open c file. We have rook e1, but there's a concern of queen b3 here if the bishop moves. We have b6, maybe prophylaxis against queen b3. Knight e2, bishop e6. Knight f1, the knight's rerouting here to put pressure on d5. Knight a5, black is following this plan, which seems very logical. That is the backward pawn in the position, and it's put under pressure. Now we have rook fd8, which frees up the bishop if needed, protecting d5. But now rook c7, g3, as though f4 might be an interesting move, with maybe some ideas of f5 after kicking the bishop. Then d5 would be loose sometimes. Maybe the bishop would go here, but it's a concern. We have g6, which addresses the concern a little bit. Knight g2 and knight going to f4 seems annoying as well. Knight c4, so on knight e3 that could be swapped off. We have rook c2, rook e7, queen c1 looking at h6. Bishop f5, an interesting reply, trying to weaken white on the light squares. Not minding about h6 at the moment. There's not enough time for white to do something about h6 to try and munch that, with the bishop hanging there. So we have rook takes e7. Let's see what other options. There's rook takes e7, or there's bishop takes f5. Let's have a quick look here on rook takes e7. This is actually, this is okay, it's about equal. So in the game anyway, sorry, that is the game continuation. In the game we have rook takes e7, bishop takes f5, pardon me. If bishop takes f5, with the idea maybe of taking on h6 later, black can take and take here, and it's hitting, the queen is hitting the rook. And so there's no problem now with h6, that's equal as well. So it's an equalish position, it seems, technically, with best moves. After rook takes e7, we see a very interesting scenario though. Black is sacrificing the a pawn. And for what exactly? He doesn't actually win the exchange back immediately. He restricts this knight as well as shielding the h6 pawn, so restricting the knight's prospects. He's going to be winning back the exchange. But if he won back the exchange immediately, this position is okay for white here. You can see white controls that e file, for example. In the game, yeah, it's slightly different now. Rook d2, black took there and plays bishop e4, and there's an immediate threat of winning with queen f3 basically, because if the queen lands there, knight e1, queen h1 is mate. So white parries that here with knight e1, that queen f3 threat. We have now rook e8, which introduces another threat, bishop f3 and rook e2, and this is the point where Mamedyarov played a4. He didn't seem to address the immediate threat, which is a symptom sometimes of blitz and rapid games. The immediate threat is not even addressed in these games quite often. To address this, in fact black has gone into a self-pin, queen e3 would pin the bishop, and this would be at least adequate for equality with best play, it seems. So we can use that pin, go into e5, maybe counter sack a pawn back, and the king is fine here. It's about equal. But instead we have this move a4, and now bishop f3 is very, very dangerous with ideas of queen f5, and maybe to knock out the knight and go in with queen h3 sometimes. Well, there's various ideas, but another major one is rook e2. So on taking on e1, there might be queen f1 as a resource, but this position here is actually where the game ended. So let's see why this is winning. I'll show you some examples. White actually resigned in this position. If knight takes f3, queen takes f3, the threat is rook e2. If queen c1, rook e2, queen f1, we have queen e4 threatening rook e1, pinning the queen. And there's no time for white to do anything. The rook is in no man's land. After f3 check, we're going to be winning the queen. So that's just one example in this final position. If h4, black can take that, and rook e2. If queen f4, take, and it's dangerous to have takes there, then there's a mate like that. And if takes with the pawn, rook d2 is winning for black, for example like this, rook d1, and now taking here h3 is, that pawn is queening. Again, the rook is in no man's land and is not able to do a thing about this, nor is the king here, because after king f1, h2 covers g1. So yeah, this is a diabolical position for white after bishop f3. If h3, rook e2, let's just show another one. g4 is crushing here. In fact, for example, h4, queen e6 threatens the knight. If white takes, this form pawn is a killer here. There's a threat of rook e1, so queen d3 check. In this position, can you see how black could win? If I give you 5 seconds, black to play. Okay, I hope you've seen rook h1, and then that form pawn delivers the checkmate. So yeah, this is killing here. If a5, rook e2, takes again, f2's, it's hopeless to defend there. Yeah, this is just crashing through. So yeah, it's a neat finish, but a terrible blunder a4. Perhaps time pressure got the better of him, but he needs to use the pin to actually survive this position. This would help white survive the position. It's the move to play queen e3. But this is the nature of blitz. Queen e3. Even there might be another option actually in queen d1. This is remarkable as well. It prevents bishop f3. Okay, there's two options, which maybe there's even more than two. It's just not a4. Various queen moves here. e2, e3, the same purpose to pin that bishop. Okay, but yeah, terrible blunder. After a4, it's kind of all over after bishop f3. You can slice and dice this the way you want, but I think you'll find there's absolutely no defense here with best play now after bishop f3. So Magnus's pawn sack worked like a treat, sacking that a pawn there. I mean, he could have, after bishop f3, sorry, the game did end anyway after bishop f3. What am I saying? Comments, questions, likes, shares appreciated. Thanks very much.